The observation deck of the Galactic Council's finest research station buzzed with nervous energy. Beings from across the galaxy pressed against reinforced viewing ports, their various forms creating a colorful mosaic of alien life. Tentacles twitched, scales shimmered, and crystalline forms pulsed with anxious light as they watched the scene unfolding on the planet below. Ambassador Zeekthal of the Viridian Collective adjusted her neural crown, its bioluminescent tendrils flickering with concern. As the lead xenobiologist on the station, she had witnessed many strange phenomena across the galaxy, but nothing quite like this. The planet Drakmor, home to the most feared predator in known space, was about to receive its first human visitor. "The readings are off the charts," muttered Dr. Kethvar, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking as he manipulated the sensor controls. The insectoid scientist's compound eyes reflected dozens of data streams simultaneously. The Void Dragon's bioenergy signature is increasing exponentially. It knows something is coming. Through the viewing port, Drakmor's surface appeared deceptively peaceful. Purple methane clouds drifted across a landscape of jagged obsidian peaks and valleys filled with what the locals called soul mist, a corrosive fog that could dissolve most known materials in seconds. Somewhere deep in those valleys lurked Nethysith, the Void Dragon, a creature so ancient and terrible that entire civilizations had fallen trying to study it from orbit. "Why would the humans send anyone to that cursed world?" whispered Felnara, her gossamer wings trembling. The fairy-like being spoke for many of the assembled observers. "Do they not understand what Nethysith has done to our greatest warriors?" Ambassador Zeekthal pulled up holographic records with a gesture. Images flickered to life, showing the remains of previous expeditions. Or rather, what little remained. The Korthak Empire had sent their finest dreadnought-class warriors. The ship's wreckage still orbited the planet, its crew's final transmission, a single word screamed across all frequencies: "Run." The crystalline consortium had tried next, believing their energy-based forms might prove immune to physical destruction. Their expedition leader's consciousness had been recovered 3 cycles later, babbling incoherently about darkness with teeth and eyes like dying stars. The survivor still resided in a specialized care facility, his crystalline matrix permanently fractured by whatever horror he had witnessed. Even the warlike Zephyrians, whose battle rage was legendary across 7 sectors, had attempted to claim Nethysith as a trophy. Their battle fleet of 300 vessels had approached with full military honors, broadcasting challenges and threats. The dragon's response had been swift and devastating. In less than 10 minutes, 300 ships became 300 falling stars, their wreckage creating a brief meteor shower, visible from 3 star systems away. "The human vessel is entering atmosphere," announced Dr. Kethvar, his voice barely concealing his fascination. "It appears to be a civilian transport?" The assembled aliens pressed closer to the viewing ports. Through the enhanced telescopic displays, they could see the ship. A simple, boxy affair that looked more suited to cargo hauling than facing galactic terrors. No weapon signatures, no military shields, no obvious protective systems. It descended through Drakmor's toxic atmosphere as casually as if landing at a spaceport terminal. "This is either the greatest display of courage in galactic history," murmured Ambassador Zeekthal, "or the most spectacular case of species-wide insanity." The transport touched down in a clearing near the Whispering Canyons, the very territory where Nethysith was known to hunt. The landing was so gentle that it barely disturbed the surrounding soul mist. For long moments, nothing happened. The observers held their breath, or performed whatever respiratory equivalent their species required. Then the ship's cargo bay opened. Dr. Kethvar's manipulator arms froze over his controls. "By the ancient makers. What are they doing?" A ramp descended from the human vessel, and figures began to emerge. But these weren't the armored warriors or heavily equipped soldiers that logic demanded. Instead, a small group of humans walked down the ramp wearing simple environmental suits and carrying what appeared to be camping equipment. "Sensors indicate 5 individuals," Dr. Kethvar reported, his voice climbing to higher frequencies in his distress. "2 adults and—" He paused, recalibrating his instruments. "3 juveniles. The humans have brought their young to face Nethicist. A collective gasp echoed through the observation deck. Bringing children to face the Void Dragon wasn't just foolish. It violated every known principle of species preservation. Even the most savage civilizations protected their offspring from existential threats. Ambassador Zixthal studied the readouts more carefully. According to our files on human development, the youngest appears to be approximately 7 standard years old. The others range from 9 to 14. She turned to address the gathered scientists and diplomats. Perhaps this is some form of ritualistic sacrifice? A way to appease the dragon? No, interrupted Sage Mordoon, the ancient keeper of galactic lore. His voice carried the weight of millennia, and his species was among the first to achieve interstellar travel. I have studied human culture extensively since their recent emergence onto the galactic stage. They are fiercely protective of their young. This makes no logical sense. On the planet's surface, the human family, for sensors confirmed they were indeed related, began setting up what could only be described as a picnic. They arranged portable chairs in a circle, unpacked food containers, and one of the adults activated some kind of audio device that began playing what human databases labeled as music. They're having a recreational gathering, stammered Dr. Kethvar. In the hunting grounds of the most dangerous predator in known space. With their children, the youngest human, a small figure with bright yellow hair, suddenly pointed toward the canyon entrance and began jumping up and down excitedly. Even through the distant sensors, her joy was unmistakable. The adults followed her gaze and began waving at something the orbital observers couldn't yet detect. Seismic sensors are picking up massive movement, Dr. Kethvar announced, his voice now tinged with panic. Something enormous is approaching from deep within the canyon system. Biosignatures match. Oh no. It's Nethicist. The observation deck fell silent, except for the hum of various life support systems. Every being present focused on the unfolding scene with morbid fascination. They were about to witness the extinction of an entire human family unit, possibly broadcast live across the galaxy as a warning to other species about the folly of approaching Drakmor. Through the enhanced viewers, a shadow began to emerge from the canyon depths. At first, it seemed like a trick of the light, a darkening of the already dim Drakmorian atmosphere. But then the shadow took shape, revealing itself to be something far worse than darkness. Nethicist rose from the canyon like a living nightmare given form. The dragon's body stretched nearly 2 kilometers from nose to tail, its scales absorbing light itself and creating distortions in local space-time. 6 wings, each large enough to shade a small city, unfurled with a sound like reality tearing. Its eyes, 12 of them arranged in 2 rows along its massive skull, burned with the cold fire of dying galaxies. The creature's very presence seemed to drain warmth from the surrounding area. Soul mist condensed and fell as acidic rain wherever its shadow passed. The rocky ground beneath its feet cracked and aged centuries in moments, demonstrating the temporal distortion field that surrounded the ancient beast. Emergency protocols, shouted Ambassador Zixthal. All vessels prepare for immediate evacuation of the system. If Nethicist decides to leave the planet's surface, we need to be ready to run. But even as alarms began sounding throughout the station, none of the observers could look away from the scene below. The dragon approached the human family with the inexorable movement of a natural disaster. Each step sent shockwaves through the ground that registered on seismic equipment 3 star systems away. The adult humans remained seated in their chairs, apparently unconcerned by the approaching cosmic horror. The children had stopped their play and were now watching Nethicist's approach with what sensors interpreted as excitement. This defies all known psychological profiles, whispered Felnara. They should be paralyzed with terror. The dragon's fear-inducement field alone has driven entire armies into catatonic states. Dr. Kethvar was frantically adjusting his sensors, trying to understand what he was seeing. I'm detecting no stress hormones, no fight or flight responses, no signs of psychological breakdown. The humans appear to be calm. Nethicist reached the clearing where the family waited. The dragon's massive head lowered until it was only a few dozen meters above the humans. its 12 eyes focusing on the tiny figures below. The creature's breath created clouds of supercooled vapor that should have flash-frozen anything in its path. Instead, the youngest human, the little girl with yellow hair, stood up from her chair and began walking toward the dragon. "No," breathed Dr. Kethvar. "She's approaching it voluntarily." Every being on the observation deck watched in stunned silence as the human child walked up to the most feared predator in galactic history, as casually as if approaching a pet. The dragon's eyes tracked her movement. And for a moment, temporal distortions rippled around both figures, making it difficult for the sensors to maintain a clear image. The little girl stopped directly beneath Nethys's massive head and did something that defied every law of biology, psychology, and common sense that the galactic community had ever established. She smiled and waved. The dragon's response was immediate and terrifying. Its 12 eyes suddenly blazed with increasing intensity, and a sound emerged from its throat that had never been recorded in any previous encounter. A deep, thrumming vibration that seemed to resonate through the fabric of space itself. "It's some form of vocalization," Dr. Kethvar reported, his instruments struggling to analyze the unprecedented data. "But the frequency patterns don't match any known aggressive displays or territorial warnings." The little girl tilted her head, apparently listening to the dragon's sound, then responded with her own vocalization, a series of high-pitched sounds that human databases identified as laughter. Then she did something that would be talked about in xenobiological circles for generations to come. She reached up toward Nethys's massive snout and made contact. The touch lasted only a moment, but in that instant, the sensors detected an energy discharge unlike anything in recorded galactic history. It wasn't the destructive force that had obliterated fleets and armies. Instead, it was something else entirely. A warm, golden radiance that spread outward from the point of contact between human child and cosmic terror. The dragon's eyes, which had burned with the cold light of dying stars for eons, suddenly flickered with something new. The temporal distortion field that surrounded the creature wavered and stabilized into patterns that reminded Dr. Kethvar of crystalline growth formations. Complex, beautiful, and somehow peaceful. "Impossible," whispered Ambassador Zeeks-Thal. "The readings suggest that Nethys's bioenergy signature is actually stabilizing. The chaotic patterns that have defined its existence for millennia are organizing into coherent structures." The little girl stepped back and said something to the dragon in human language. The translation system struggled with the informal speech patterns but managed to render her words. "Hi there, big guy. Want to meet my family?" Nethys's response shattered every assumption the galactic community had ever made about the creature's nature. The massive dragon carefully, delicately, lowered its enormous head until it rested on the ground beside the human family's picnic site. The movement was so gentle that it didn't even disturb their portable furniture. The other human children immediately rushed over, their parents following at a more measured pace but showing no signs of fear or concern. Within moments, the clearing contained the most impossible scene in galactic history. A human family having a picnic next to a peacefully resting cosmic horror. "I need to report this to the High Council immediately," Ambassador Zeeks-Thal said, though her voice lacked conviction. "But who would believe it? A human child just befriended Nethys." Dr. Kethvar was reviewing his sensor logs, trying to find some explanation for what they had witnessed. "The energy discharge when contact was made. It appears to have triggered some kind of fundamental change in the dragon's neural pathways. As if the creature was somehow remembering something it had forgotten." On the planet's surface, the scene continued to defy logic. The human children were now playing some kind of game that involved running around the dragon's massive form while their parents unpacked more food. Nethys watched the children with all 12 eyes, and the orbital sensors detected what could only be described as contentment emanating from the ancient creature. "Look at the temporal readings," Dr. Kethvar said suddenly. "The distortion field isn't just stabilizing, it's reversing. Areas around the dragon that were aged by centuries are actually returning to their previous state." It was true. Where Nethys had stepped, the cracked and weathered stone was healing, returning to its natural state. The soul mist that had plagued Drakmor for eons was beginning to clear in an expanding radius around the dragon's position. For the first time in recorded history, patches of actual sunlight were breaking through to touch the planet's surface. By the ancient makers, breathed Sage Morden. What if we've had it wrong all this time? In rebatter, what if Nethys isn't a destroyer at all? The suggestion sent ripples of shock through the observation deck. The idea that their fundamental understanding of the galaxy's most feared predator might be incorrect was almost too large to process. Ambassador Zixthal was already opening communication channels to the major galactic powers. This discovery would change everything they thought they knew about dragons, about humans, and about the nature of the universe itself. But for now, she could only watch as a human family shared their lunch with a creature that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, wondering what other impossible things these strange newcomers might be capable of accomplishing. The emergency session of the Galactic High Council convened within hours of the initial reports from the Drakmor observation station. Representatives from 300 species crowded into the massive assembly chamber, their various forms creating a living kaleidoscope of galactic diversity. The air thrummed with dozens of different languages as translators worked overtime to keep pace with the unprecedented discussion. Chancellor Vexthara of the Hegemony called for order, her crystalline form pulsing with authoritative blue light. We are here to address the reports from Drakmor Station regarding the human interaction with the entity designated Nethys. Ambassador Zixthal, please present your findings. The Viridian diplomat activated the central holographic display, showing the recorded footage from the observation station. Gasps and exclamations in various alien languages filled the chamber as the assembly watched the impossible scene unfold. A human child walking up to the galaxy's most feared predator and simply touching it. The implications are staggering. Ambassador Zixthal began, her neural crown flickering with nervous energy. For over 2,000 standard years, Nethys has been classified as a cosmic threat level Omega. Every approach has resulted in complete destruction of all participants. Yet these humans appear to have achieved peaceful contact with no apparent preparation or special equipment. High Admiral Korzak of the Zephyrian Warfleet slammed his armored fist on his delegation's table. Impossible! My finest warriors died attempting what this child accomplished with a simple touch. There must be some deception, some hidden technology we cannot detect. Dr. Kethvar's image appeared via quantum communication link from the observation station. His compound eyes reflected multiple data streams as he addressed the assembly. High Admiral, I understand your skepticism, but our sensors detected no technological interference. The interaction appears to be purely biological, or perhaps I should say, purely human. The chamber erupted in heated discussion. Representatives demanded explanations that no one could provide. How could a species that had only recently achieved interstellar travel succeed where ancient civilizations had failed catastrophically? Meanwhile, on Drakmor's surface, the human family continued their unprecedented picnic. The youngest girl, whose name was Sarah, according to intercepted communications, had somehow convinced Nethys to participate in what human databases classified as hide and seek. The massive dragon was attempting to conceal its 2-kilometer form behind rock formations that were obviously far too small to hide it, while the human children pretended not to see the obvious hiding spots. The dragon is playing, whispered Felnara, her gossamer wings trembling with disbelief. A creature that has existed since before my species developed written language is playing games with human children? The transformation of Drakmor itself was equally remarkable. Where Nethys' presence had once brought temporal decay and environmental destruction, the planet was now experiencing a renaissance. The soul mist continued to clear in expanding circles, revealing landscapes that hadn't seen natural light in millennia. Ancient forests, preserved in temporal stasis, were beginning to bloom again as the dragon's destructive field reversed into something that could only be described as healing energy. We're detecting life signs across the planet, Dr. Kethvar reported to the council session. Species that were thought extinct are emerging from deep underground shelters. The entire ecosystem appears to be regenerating at an accelerated rate. This revelation caused another uproar in the assembly. Drakmor had been written off as a dead world. poisoned beyond recovery by Nethys's mere presence. The idea that it could be healing challenged fundamental assumptions about cosmic threats and environmental destruction. Sage Mordoon raised his ancient hand for attention. Perhaps we should consider that our understanding of dragons has been fundamentally flawed. What if they are not destroyers by nature, but guardians driven mad by isolation and fear? The suggestion was radical beyond measure. Dragon lore across the galaxy consistently described these entities as forces of chaos and destruction. Ancient texts spoke of dragons as the enemies of all life, cosmic aberrations that existed only to unmake the order that civilizations had built. But the evidence from Drakmor was undeniable. As the human family spent more time with Nethys, the dragon's behavior continued to defy every established pattern. The creature that had once vaporized entire fleets now carefully adjusted its movements to avoid accidentally stepping on the human's picnic blanket. Look at the neural activity scans. Dr. Kethvar highlighted new data streams on the holographic display. Nethys's brain patterns are showing massive reorganization. Structures that appeared chaotic and fragmented are integrating into coherent networks. It's as if the dragon is remembering who it used to be. I, the human father, identified as Dr. Marcus Chen according to their ship's registration, was now engaged in what appeared to be conversation with the massive dragon. The creature would emit its deep, thrumming vocalizations, and Dr. Chen would respond in standard human speech. Somehow, they seemed to understand each other perfectly. Are we witnessing the development of true interspecies communication? Asked Representative Tholmas of the Academic Consortium. If humans can establish meaningful contact with dragons, the implications for galactic diplomacy could be revolutionary. But it was Sarah, the youngest human child, who continued to demonstrate the most remarkable connection with Nethys. She had somehow convinced the dragon to lower one of its massive wings, creating a slide that she and her siblings used for entertainment. The sight of human children playing on a cosmic horror's wing would have been comical if it weren't so impossible. The energy readings around the child are unlike anything we've recorded, Dr. Kethvar noted. There's some form of resonance between her biological field and the dragon's quantum signature. It's almost as if they're operating on the same frequency. Ambassador Zeekthal pulled up comparative analyses from her database. I've been reviewing historical records of dragon encounters across the galaxy. In every case, the attacking forces approached with weapons, shields, and aggressive intent. The dragons responded with equivalent force. But the humans came with no weapons, no threats, no fear. They brought children and a picnic, added Felnara softly. They approached the most feared creature in the galaxy, as if it were a neighbor they wanted to befriend. This observation sparked a new line of discussion among the assembly. Human psychology reports indicated that their species had an unusual tendency to anthropomorphize other beings, to assume that even the most alien entities might respond to kindness and understanding. Most galactic species considered this trait to be a dangerous weakness that would lead to extinction. Perhaps they had been wrong. On Drakmor, the impossible day was drawing toward the planet's shortened sunset. The human family began packing their picnic supplies, while Nethys watched with obvious interest. When Sarah approached the dragon's massive head to say goodbye, something extraordinary happened. Nethys began to emit a sound unlike anything the creature had produced before. A gentle, melodic humming that resonated through both the audio and quantum spectrums. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, carrying harmonics that seemed to speak directly to the soul of any being who heard it. It's singing, Dr. Kethvar reported, his voice filled with wonder. The dragon is singing to the human child. Sarah smiled and began to sing back, a simple human melody that her mother had apparently taught her. The two voices, one cosmic and ancient beyond measure, the other young and full of innocent joy, created a harmony that sent ripples through space-time itself. The effect on the observation station was immediate and profound. Beings who had been enemies for generations found themselves standing side by side, listening to the impossible duet with tears in their eyes, or whatever equivalent their species possessed. The song seemed to touch something universal, a reminder of beauty and connection that transcended species boundaries. "Record everything," whispered Chancellor Vex Thera. This moment must be preserved for all future generations. As the song concluded, Sarah reached up and gently patted Nethys's snout, a gesture so casual and affectionate that it defied the cosmic significance of the moment. The dragon's 12 eyes closed in what could only be interpreted as contentment. And for a brief instant, the ancient creature looked almost peaceful. The human family began walking back toward their transport, waving goodbye to their new friend. But Nethys was not ready for the encounter to end. The massive dragon carefully rose and began to follow the humans, moving with surprising grace for such an enormous creature. "It's following them," Dr. Kethvar announced unnecessarily, as every sensor operator could see the readings. "The dragon is following the humans back to their ship." The scene that unfolded next would become legend across the galaxy. When the human family reached their transport, Sarah turned back to Nethys, then spoke words that the translation systems rendered as, "You can come visit us anytime you want, okay? We live on a planet called Earth. It's really pretty there, and Mom makes the best cookies in the whole galaxy." Nethys' response was to emit another of its thrumming vocalizations, this one clearly in a questioning tone. "Doctor?" Chen stepped forward and appeared to be giving the dragon directions, actually providing navigational coordinates to Earth to a creature that could travel through space-time at will. "They're inviting it to visit their homeworld," Ambassador Zeekthal said in a voice barely above a whisper. "They're inviting a cosmic-level threat to Earth." But even as she spoke the words, she realized how wrong they sounded. Nothing about Nethys' behavior suggested threat anymore. The creature had revealed itself to be something far more complex than anyone had imagined. Not a force of destruction, but perhaps a lonely guardian who had forgotten its purpose until reminded by the innocent touch of a human child. The human transport lifted off from Drakmor's surface, leaving the dragon standing alone in the clearing. But as the ship departed, something remarkable happened. Nethys spread its 6 massive wings and launched itself into space, following the human vessel at a respectful distance. "By the ancient makers," breathed High Admiral Korzak, "it's escorting them. The dragon is providing protection for their journey home." Dr. Kethvar confirmed the readings. Nethys has positioned itself approximately 10,000 kilometers behind the human ship. It's matching their velocity and trajectory perfectly. The escort formation is protective. The implications hit the assembly like a shockwave. If dragons could bond with humans, if they could be allies rather than enemies, then everything the galaxy thought it knew about these creatures needed to be reconsidered. How many dragons were out there, alone and misunderstood, waiting for someone to approach them with kindness instead of weapons? "We need to establish formal contact with the humans immediately," Chancellor Vexthara declared. "If their species has the ability to communicate with dragons, they could help us resolve conflicts that have raged for millennia." But Ambassador Zixthal was already reviewing the human ship's destination. According to their filed flight plan, they're heading to a system designated as Sol. To the 3rd planet. Earth appears to be their primary colony world. A colony world? Dr. Kethvar's compound eyes refracted in surprise. "Our intelligence suggested Earth was their home planet." "It is," Sage Mordun corrected quietly. "According to our xenological studies, humans evolved on Earth. If they consider it merely one of many worlds, then they have a very different relationship with planets than most species." This revelation added yet another layer to the growing mystery of human nature. Most species treasured their home worlds above all else, treating them as sacred and irreplaceable. But humans seem to view planets as homes to be shared. As the observation session continued, reports began flowing in from across the galaxy. The news of successful human-dragon contact was spreading through diplomatic channels, and the responses were immediate and dramatic. Species that had been locked in territorial disputes with dragons for centuries were demanding human mediation. Ancient grudges that had shaped galactic politics for millennia suddenly seemed negotiable. But perhaps most significantly, long-range sensors began detecting movement in deep space. Dragons that had hidden in the void for eons were beginning to stir, as if responding to some cosmic signal that announced the possibility of peace. The universe was about to change in ways no one could have predicted, And it had all started with a little girl who saw a monster and decided to offer it friendship instead of fear. 6 months after the incident on Drakmor, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The human colony ship Peaceful Horizons approached Earth's orbital space, carrying the largest diplomatic delegation in recorded galactic history. Representatives from over 500 species crowded the massive vessel's conference halls, all eager to witness what had become known as the Earth phenomenon. Ambassador Zixthal stood at the observation deck's main viewing port, her neural crown flickering with barely contained excitement. Through the transparent aluminum, Earth hung like a blue and green jewel against the star field. But it was what surrounded the planet that had stunned the diplomatic corps into speechless awe. Dozens of dragons moved in graceful orbits around Earth, their massive forms creating an impossible ballet in the vacuum of space. These weren't just any dragons. These were creatures that had been legends for millennia. Cosmic entities that had single-handedly shaped the military policies of entire galactic sectors. Identification confirmed on the largest specimen, Dr. Kethvar announced from his sensor station. That's Vorth Ak, the Star Render, responsible for the destruction of the Kelvani Third Fleet 2 centuries ago. And there, the silver one with the crystal formations. That's Zephyra the Time Walker. She's been missing for over 400 years. Each dragon identification sent ripples of shock through the assembled diplomats. These weren't just dangerous predators that humans had somehow tamed. These were living legends, creatures of such power that entire civilizations had built their mythologies around avoiding them. But here they were, moving in peaceful formation around a single blue world, apparently serving as guardians. Incoming transmission from Earth Traffic Control, announced the communications officer, a nervous young Centaurian whose telepathic abilities made him ideal for managing multiple communication channels. We're being assigned orbital coordinates and an escort? Through the viewport, one of the smaller dragons, though smaller, still meant nearly a kilometer in length, detached from the orbital formation and approached their ship. Its scales shimmered with colors that had no names in any known language, and its eyes held the wisdom of eons. By the ancient makers, whispered Felnera. That's Morthus the Dream Singer. It hasn't been seen for over 1,000 years. The ethereal consortium built an entire religion around searching for it. Ara. The dragon positioned itself alongside the diplomatic vessel, matching its course and velocity with impossible precision. Through the ship's external cameras, they could see the creature's massive head turn toward their viewing port. And for a moment, its ancient eyes seemed to look directly at each observer. Then Morthus did something that defied every previous encounter with dragons in galactic history. It began to emit a complex pattern of light pulses from specialized organs along its neck, creating what could only be described as a greeting display. It's welcoming us, Dr. Kethvar said in amazement. The dragon is performing a formal diplomatic greeting. How did it learn our protocols? The answer came from Earth Traffic Control. Diplomatic vessel, Peaceful Horizons, you are cleared for approach to Luna Station. Please follow your escort and maintain current velocity. Morthus will guide you to the diplomatic docking bay. Welcome to the Sol System. The casual way the human traffic controller referred to the legendary dragon by name, as if it were just another member of the control team, sent another wave of astonishment through the alien diplomats. Luna Station turned out to be a marvel of engineering that defied conventional understanding of space architecture. Built into Earth's moon, the station sprawled across both the visible and dark sides of the satellite. Its design incorporating features that seemed specifically adapted for dragon habitation. Massive bays opened directly to space, each one large enough to accommodate creatures of cosmic proportions. The construction appears to be collaborative, Dr. Kethvar observed as they approached. I'm detecting both human engineering signatures and something else. The energy patterns suggest the dragons themselves participated in the building process. As their ship docked, the diplomats were greeted by a sight that would have been impossible anywhere else in the galaxy. The station's arrival bay was staffed by both humans and dragons working together in perfect coordination. A massive creature with scales like polished obsidian carefully maneuvered cargo containers, while human technicians directed the process via some form of shared communication system. The human delegation leader, Dr. Sarah Chen, the same little girl who had first touched Nethysist, now grown into a young woman, approached the diplomatic party with a warm smile. Floating beside her, held aloft by some form of anti-gravity field, was a dragon the size of a house cat, its miniature form perfectly proportioned, despite its impossible size. "Welcome to Luna Station, Doctor," Chen said, her voice carrying the same warm confidence she had possessed as a child. "I'm Sarah Chen, Director of Interspecies Relations. This is my partner, Oler Pipsis. He's what we call a nano-dragon, though he's actually just as ancient and wise as his larger cousins." The tiny dragon emitted a sound like tinkling bells and performed an elaborate aerial bow that somehow conveyed both dignity and humor. Ambassador Zeeksthal found herself struggling to process what she was seeing. "Forgive my directness, Dr. Chen, but our records suggest that dragons cannot alter their physical size. How is this possible?" Dr. Chen's smile grew even brighter. "That's one of many things we've learned about dragons since that first day on Drakmor. They're not actually bound by conventional physics the way we assumed. Size, time, space, these are more like suggestions to them. They can be as large or small as the situation requires." To demonstrate, Pips is suddenly expanded to the size of a shuttlecraft, his form filling a significant portion of the arrival bay. Then, compressed back down to housecat size, in the space of a heartbeat. The transformation was so casual that it was clear this was perfectly normal behavior. "The tour begins in Conference Hall Alpha," Dr. Chen continued, gesturing toward a corridor that seemed to stretch far beyond what the station's exterior dimensions should have allowed. "But first, I think you should meet the Council." The Dragon Council, as it turned out, was exactly what the name implied: a formal governing body of dragons that worked alongside human leadership to manage Earth's interstellar relations. The conference hall where they met defied geometry, its interior space somehow vast enough to accommodate dozens of full-size dragons, while still fitting within the station's structure. Nethysist was there, looking exactly as magnificent and terrible as the day Sarah had first approached it. But now the ancient dragon wore what could only be described as a smile, its 12 eyes bright with intelligence and warmth as it recognized the assembled diplomats from the old observation station footage. "Honored guests," Nethysist spoke, its voice somehow reaching every being in the hall despite the vacuum of space around them. "We welcome you to the new age of galactic cooperation. Long have we dwelt in shadow and solitude, misunderstood and feared. But humanity has shown us a different path." The dragon gestured with one massive wing toward a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Where once there had been vast regions marked as dragon territory, avoid at all costs, now there were dozens of green zones labeled as protected systems and cooperative colonies. "We have spent eons guarding worlds and species from threats you could not imagine," continued another dragon, this one with scales that shifted like Aurora Borealis. "But without communication, without understanding, our protection was seen as aggression. Humanity has given us the gift of friendship. And through friendship, we have remembered our true purpose." Dr. Chen stepped forward to address the assembly. "What we've learned is that dragons are naturally protective entities. They're drawn to worlds and species that need guardianship. But they've been operating in isolation for so long that they forgot how to communicate their intentions. When we approached Nethysist with curiosity instead of fear, we opened a dialogue that has changed everything." Representative Tholmus of the Academic Consortium raised a tentacle in query. "But how does this explain their previous aggressive behavior? The destroyed fleets? The devastated colonies?" Nethysist's great head turned toward the academic with something that might have been sadness. "When beings approach with weapons and war machines, we respond to protect what we guard. A parent will fight to defend their young, even if the approaching stranger means no harm. We had no way to distinguish between protectors and invaders, so we chose the safety of those we guarded over the lives of the approaching unknown." The explanation sent ripples of understanding through the diplomatic assembly. Every dragon attack in galactic history had been a defensive action by a creature trying to protect something it valued. The tragedy was that the dragons had been unable to communicate their protective intentions, leading to a cycle of misunderstanding and violence that had lasted for millennia. The humans changed that, added Zephyra the Time Walker, her silver scales chiming softly as she moved. They came not as conquerors or challenges to be met, but as friends seeking to understand. Young Sarah's innocent gesture of affection broke through barriers of fear and mistrust that had existed since before your civilizations achieved spaceflight. Dr. Chen activated another holographic display, this one showing the current distribution of dragon-protected systems throughout the galaxy. We've established the Guardian Protocol, a formal system where dragons and local governments work together to protect inhabited worlds from cosmic threats. Pirates, rogue asteroids, unstable stellar phenomena. The dragons handle threats that would overwhelm conventional defenses. In return, added Pips, his tiny voice somehow carrying as much authority as his massive cousins, we receive what we have always truly desired: companionship, understanding, and the knowledge that our protection is appreciated rather than feared. High Admiral Korzak of the Zephyrian Warfleet leaned forward in his specialized chair. What of military implications? If dragons are now allied with humanity, does this shift the balance of galactic power? The question hung in the air for a moment before being answered not by words, but by action. Every dragon in the hall began to emit a low, harmonic hum that seemed to resonate through the very structure of space-time. The sound was neither threatening nor aggressive. Instead, it carried a message of peace so profound that several diplomats found themselves weeping without knowing why. "We do not seek dominion," Nethesis said quietly. "We seek only to fulfill our true nature as guardians and protectors. Any species that approaches us with peaceful intent will find allies beyond measure. Any species that threatens the innocent will face consequences beyond their comprehension." The demonstration that followed was brief but memorable. Through the hall's viewing ports, the diplomats watched as Zephyra the Time Walker briefly accelerated her personal time stream, causing her to flicker between moments in a display of temporal manipulation that defied the understanding of even the most advanced civilizations. "The galaxy is vast and full of wonders and dangers, Doctor," Chen said as the demonstration concluded. "Humanity offers something that we believe has been missing: the ability to bring together those who have been separated by fear and misunderstanding. Dragons have protected us all for eons without recognition or gratitude. Perhaps it's time to change that." The formal negotiations that followed established new frameworks for galactic cooperation that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. Trade agreements were signed with dragon witnesses whose mere presence guaranteed enforcement. Research partnerships were formed to study cosmic phenomena under dragon protection. Exploration missions were planned to regions of space that had been considered unreachably dangerous, now made safe by dragon escorts. But perhaps most remarkably, a new tradition began to emerge. Young beings from across the galaxy began requesting to visit Earth, hoping to experience the mysterious human ability to see friends instead of monsters. The Academy of Interspecies Understanding was founded on Luna Station, where students learned not just facts about other species, but how to approach them with the curiosity and openness that humanity seemed to possess naturally. As the diplomatic session concluded, and the various representatives prepared to return to their home worlds with news of the new age, Ambassador Zixthal found herself standing once again at the observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum, Earth hung in space, surrounded by its impossible guardians. Creatures that had been the subject of nightmares for eons, now revealed as protectors who had simply been waiting for someone to say hello. "How did you know?" she asked Dr. Chen, who had joined her at the viewport. "When you were a child on Drakmor, how did you know that Nethesis wouldn't hurt you?" Sarah Chen smiled, the same bright expression she had worn as a 7-year-old girl approaching the galaxy's most feared predator. "I didn't know it wouldn't hurt me, but I could see it was lonely. And my parents always taught me that when someone is lonely, the best thing you can do is offer them friendship." Through the viewing port, Nethesis drifted past in its eternal orbit around Earth. As it moved, the ancient dragon turned its massive head toward the station and performed what could only be described as a gentle nod of acknowledgement. A cosmic entity that had found peace through the simple kindness of a human child. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps, Ambassador Zixthal thought, as she prepared her final reports, that was exactly what the universe had been waiting for all along. Someone brave enough to see monsters as friends, and wise enough to greet the unknown with open arms, instead of weapons drawn. In the end, it had taken humanity to teach the galaxy its most important lesson. Sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe is not strength, or technology, or ancient wisdom, but the simple courage to say hello to a stranger and mean it with all your heart.